Nityam hiram hi sarvam yena yakalkaro guni sarva vid yaha tene shitam karma vivartate ha pritvi yapyate yoni lakani shintyam. Purushottama, the nucleus of the cycle of creation, is intimately linked with all objects through his individual association, Ota Yoga, and pervasive association, Prota Yoga. He is engulfing all entities. Had he remained only as nucleus, having no relationship with the created objects, he would not have had any controlling capacity, and the objects would not have had any inherent dynamism. Thus, the macrocosmic nucleus is not a mere witnessing entity, but is also the source of all impetus and inspiration. Being the supreme source, he maintains the closest contact with all microcosms and all entities. The association of this eternal entity with every microcosm is that of the knower and source of inspiration. This association has caused the entitative existence of microcosms to come into being, and only due to his inherent dynamicity have unit minds developed the capacity to mentally measure time. It is therefore illogical to accept the time factor as being the ultimate cause of creation. If one attempts to find the ultimate cause through philosophical analysis, one will have to retrace the steps of the universal creation backwards along the path of cause and effect. Those who accept time or nature as being the fundamental factor will have to explain logically why they are the original cause, and why they have no preceding cause. Up till now, such people have been a total failure in this respect, but wise people, in the light of theory of Brahmachakra, can explain why this supreme entity and his divine principle are the nominal cause of creation, and why they are not preceded by any previous cause. Purushottama is the knower of all the entities created due to the influence of the binding principles of Prakriti, and is thus called Gunadisha, Lord of the Gunas. Since he controls all the entities, which are Gunadina, bound by the Gunas, he is indirectly in contact with the Gunas, and thus cannot be called Gunatita, beyond the Gunas, or Gunavarjita, having no link with the Gunas. Purushottama is the knower of each entity in his individual association, Ota Yoga, and of the entire creation in his pervasive association, Prota Yoga, and as such is omniscient. As he knows everything, nothing can be done secretly. As he is the entity behind the cosmic connection, no action is possible in his absence. None of the five fundamental factors, ethereal, aerial, luminous, liquid, solid, or their initial stages, or any so-called matter, can be called the cause of creation, because they are exclusively dependent upon the grace of the cosmic entity for their existence. The so-called materialistic philosophies, while describing matter as the cause of creation, deliberately ignore the fundamental spirit of the law of dynamism. Tat karma kritva vinvyartya buddhyas tatvasya tatvena samitya yogam ekena dvabhyam tribira stavirpa kalena shaivatma gunaesha sukshmaye. Indeed, the supreme entity, after creating the five fundamental factors in the extraversal flow of the cosmic imagination, put an end to the cycle of creation? No, with the emergence of the five fundamental factors, one after the other, as progressively cruder expressions in the cosmic flow, one phase of creation was complete. The other phase of creation began from that point, with the help of his Ashta Prakriti, eightfold Prakriti, and Sorasha, Vikriti, 16 modifications. Increasingly complex structures were created. Today he is still creating more complex structures with a permutation and combination of any number of these factors. The growth in complexity precipitates a tremendous internal clash in microcosmic structures, where the degree of diversity in these belligerent forces is extreme, There arises the expression of life and the capacity of mental thinking. In such cases, there is some kind of capacity to maintain an adjustment between the internal life and external life. But where life does not evolve, and the unit mind remains unexpressed, the material structures ultimately explode in the form of Yadaspota, and generating tremendous heat in a particular portion of the universe, provide new impetus to the cosmic flow of creation. When a microcosm develops as a result of the combination of the fundamental factors, it gains an awareness of the time factor. Time as the motivity of action comes within its micropsychic capacity of measurement. Where the time factor has become linked with the fundamental factors, the developed mind is said to be functioning. In the flow of Pratisanchara, the microcosm then rushes towards the witnessing force, macrocosmic consciousness. There is also a qualitative change in the nature of bondage, macropsychic connection. That complex structure, with the help of the subtler binding faculties, takes the form of developed beings or human beings who move gradually along the path of progress with the indomitable vitality of spiritual inspiration. Arabhya karmani gunan vitani bhavamsha sarvan viniyo yaed yaha tesha mabhave krita karma nashaha karmakshaya yati saha tattvotanyat. As unit macrocosms move along the path of progress, not only does thinking power develop, but various psychic propensities find expression, because the mind requires such propensities to maintain its individual existence. The driving force of the propensities leads unit beings to bondage, not to liberation. So in the earliest stages of microcosmic growth, that is, in the creatures of the primordial phase, the materialistic proclivity is predominant, and the expression of consciousness is very little. Even after the development of greater thinking power, if the mind remains engrossed in material enjoyment, instead of advancing towards consciousness, there is greater possibility of psychic degeneration. This is the reason why physically developed human beings should be very particular about the nature of their thoughts and actions. Under normal circumstances, living beings advance from an undeveloped stage to a developed one. Thus, the history of all living beings is the history of their undeveloped stages, the history of the predominance of crude materialistic or animalistic tendencies. Timid people are always afraid of taking risks. They have immense difficulty severing their blind attachment to the past to welcome the new. They think that the life of crude pleasure is the natural life, quote, natural life. Even after the development of greater psychic strength and subtle analytical power, they misuse their potentialities in the pursuit of crude pleasures. This psychic movement towards crudity is dominated by the static principle. They rapidly degenerate and court a life of mean pursuits. But since most actions are related to matter, and since one is obliged to work in the mundane world for one's self-preservation, what should be the proper way of life? Is it possible to attain liberation from bondages even while busily engaged with the day-to-day activities of one's life? One will have to work. Those who wish to attain liberation from bondage will have to free themselves by their actions from the fetters of the mind. Ashtapasha, bondage of lineage, vanity of culture, false sense of prestige, hatred, doubt, fear, share, and censure. However, when every action is associated with the binding faculties, gunashrayi, how can one liberate oneself by performing actions? The Rishi says that those who work only for work's sake will be engrossed in the gunas. Their actions have every possibility of causing even greater bondage. But if people perform actions while ideating on Brahma, their actions cease to be the cause of bondage and rather become an integral part of Brahma sadhana. When actions are performed with the right ideation, they become part of one's sincere endeavor to free oneself from the bondage of the fetters of the mind, pashas. As a consequence of such actions, one transcends all the bondages of the gunas and attains complete emancipation. Hence, O Sadhakas, ensure that the psychic flow of your karma sadhana is directed towards Brahma sadhana. Merge your individual existence into the cosmic existence. Transform your mundane actions into spiritual actions through your cosmic ideation.